The Fables of Aesop. In this collection, we'll be reading from the edition published by Hodder and Stoughton in London in 1909, and we'll be reading the stories between the oak and the reeds and the ox and the butcher. Aesop's Fables. The Oak and the Reeds. A very large oak was uprooted by the wind and thrown across a stream. It fell across some reeds, which it thus addressed: "I wonder how you, who are so light and weak, are not entirely crushed by these strong winds." They replied, "You fight and contend with the wind, and consequently you are destroyed, while we, on the contrary, bend before the least breath of air, and therefore remain unbroken and escape." Stoop to conquer. The Lion in a Farmyard. A lion entered a farmyard. The farmer, wishing to catch him, shut the gate. The lion, when he found that he could not escape, flew upon the sheep and killed them, and then attacked the oxen. The farmer, beginning to be alarmed for his own safety, opened the gate, when the lion got off as fast as he could. On his departure, the farmer grievously lamented the destruction of his sheep and oxen, when his wife, who had been a spectator of all that took place, said, "On my word, you are rightly served. For how could you for a moment think of shutting up a lion along with you in the farmyard, when you know that you shake in your shoes if you only hear his roar at ever so great a distance?" Mercury and the Sculptor. Mercury once determined to learn in what esteem he was held among mortals. For this purpose he assumed the character of a man and visited in this disguise a sculptor's studio. Having looked at various statues, he demanded the price of 2 figures of Jupiter and of Juno. When the sum at which they were valued was named, he pointed to a figure of himself, saying to the sculptor, "You will certainly want much more for this, as it is the statue of the messenger of the gods, and the author of all your gain." The sculptor replied, "Well, if you will buy these, I'll fling you that into the bargain." The Fox and the Woodcutter. A fox running before the hounds came across a woodcutter felling an oak, and besought him to show him a safe hiding place. The woodcutter advised him to take shelter in his own hut. The fox crept in and hid himself in a corner. The huntsman came up with his hounds in a few minutes, and inquired of the woodcutter if he had seen the fox. He declared that he had not seen him, and yet pointed, all the time he was speaking, to the hut where the fox lay hid. The huntsman took no notice of the signs, but believing his word, hastened forward in the chase. As soon as they were well away, the fox departed without taking any notice of the woodcutter, whereupon he called to him and reproached him, saying, "You ungrateful fellow, you owe your life to me, and yet you leave me without a word of thanks." The fox replied, "Indeed, I should have thanked you fervently, if your deeds had been as good as your words, and if your hands had not been traitors to your speech." The Birdcatcher, the Partridge, and the Cock. A birdcatcher was about to sit down to a dinner of herbs when a friend unexpectedly came in. The bird trap was quite empty, as he had caught nothing. He proceeded to kill a pied partridge which he had tamed for a decoy. He entreated thus earnestly for his life: "What would you do without me when next you spread your nets? Who would chirp you to sleep, or call for you the covey of answering birds?" The birdcatcher spared his life, and determined to pick out a fine young cock just attaining to his comb. He thus expostulated in piteous tones from his perch: "If you kill me, who will announce to you the appearance of the dawn? Who will wake you to your daily tasks, or tell you when it is time to visit the bird trap in the morning?" He replied, "What you say is true. You are a capital bird at telling the time of day, but I and the friend who has come in must have our dinners." Necessity knows no law. The Wolf and the Lion. A wolf, having stolen a lamb from a fold, was carrying him off to his lair. A lion met him in the path, and seizing the lamb, took it from him. The wolf, standing at a safe distance, exclaimed, "You have unrighteously taken that which was mine from me." The lion jeeringly replied, "It was righteously yours, eh? The gift of a friend?" The Ant and the Dove. An ant went to the bank of a river to quench its thirst, and being carried away by the rush of the stream, was on the point of being drowned. A dove, sitting on a tree overhanging the water, plucked a leaf and let it fall into the stream close to her. The ant, climbing to it, floated in safety to the bank. Shortly afterwards, a bird-catcher came and stood under the tree and laid his lime twigs for the dove, which sat in the branches. The ant, perceiving his design, stung him in the foot. He suddenly threw down the twigs and thereupon made the dove take wing. The grateful heart will always find opportunities to show its gratitude. The Monkey and the Fisherman. A monkey perched upon a lofty tree saw some fishermen casting their nets into a river and narrowly watched their proceedings. The fishermen after a while gave over fishing and on going home to dinner left their nets upon the bank. The monkey, who is the most imitative of animals, descended from the treetop and endeavored to do as they had done. Having handled the net, he threw it into the river, but became entangled in the meshes. When drowning, he said to himself, "I am rightly served, for what business had I who had never handled a net to try and catch fish?" The Mice and the Weasels. The weasels and the mice waged a perpetual warfare with each other, in which much blood was shed. The weasels were always the victors. The mice thought that the cause of their frequent defeats was that they had not leaders set apart from the general army to command them, and that they were exposed to dangers for want of discipline. They chose therefore such mice as were most renowned for their family descent, strength, and counsel, as well as most noted for their courage in the fight, that they might marshal them in battle array and form them into troops, regiments, and battalions. When all this was done, and the army disciplined, and the herald mouse had duly proclaimed war by challenging the weasels, the newly chosen generals bound their heads with straws, that they might be more conspicuous to all their troops. Scarcely had the battle commenced, when a great rout overwhelmed the mice, who scampered off as fast as they could to their holes. The generals, not being able to get in on account of the ornaments on their heads, were all captured and eaten by the weasels. The more honor, the more danger. The Hares and the Frogs. The hares, oppressed with a sense of their own exceeding timidity, and weary of the perpetual alarm to which they were exposed, with one accord determined to put an end to themselves and their troubles by jumping from a lofty precipice into a deep lake below. As they scampered off in a very numerous body to carry out their resolve, the frogs, lying on the banks of the lake, heard the noise of their feet and rushed helter-skelter to the deep water for safety. On seeing the rapid disappearance of the frogs, one of the hares cried to his companions, "Stay, my friends, do not do as you intended, for you now see that other creatures who yet live are more timorous than ourselves." The Doe and the Lion. A doe, hard-pressed by hunters, entered a cave for shelter which belonged to a lion. The lion concealed himself on seeing her approach, but when she was safe within the cave, sprang upon her and tore her to pieces. "Woe is me!" exclaimed the doe, "who have escaped from man, only to throw myself into the mouth of a wild beast." In avoiding one evil, care must be taken not to fall into another. The Fisherman and the Little Fish. A fisherman who lived on the produce of his nets one day caught a single small fish as the result of his day's labors. The fish, panting convulsively, thus entreated for his life, "O sir, what good can I be to you, and how little I am worth? I am not yet come to my full size. Pray spare my life, and put me back into the sea. I shall soon become a large fish, fit for the tables of the rich, and then you can catch me again, and make a handsome profit of me." The fisherman replied, "I should indeed be a very simple fellow, if for the chance of a greater uncertain profit I were to forego my present certain gain." The Hunter and Woodman. A hunter, not very bold, was searching for the tracks of a lion. He asked a man felling oaks in the forest if he had seen any marks of his footsteps, or if he knew where his lair was. "I will," he said, "at once show you the lion himself." The hunter, turning very pale and chattering with his teeth from fear, replied, "No, thank you. I did not ask that. It is his track only I am in search of, not the lion himself." The hero is brave in deeds as well as words. The Swollen Fox. A fox, very much famished, seeing some bread and meat left by shepherds in the hollow of an oak tree, crept into the hole and made a hearty meal. When he finished, he was so full that he was not able to get out, and began to groan and lament very sadly. Another fox passing by heard his cries, and, coming up, inquired the cause of his complaining. On learning what had happened, he said to him, "Ah, you will have to remain there, my friend, until you become such as you were when you crept in, and then you will easily get out." The Camel and the Arab. An Arab camel driver, having completed the lading of his camel, asked him which he would like best, to go uphill or downhill. The poor beast replied, not without a touch of reason, "Why do you ask me? Is it that the level way through the desert is closed?" The Miller, his son, and their ass. A miller and his son were driving their ass to a neighboring fair to sell him. They had not gone far when they met a troop of women collected around a well, talking and laughing. "Look there!" cried one of them. "Did you ever see such fellows, to be trudging along the road on foot when they might ride?" The old man, hearing this, quickly made his son mount the ass, and continued to walk along merrily by his side. Presently they came up to a group of old men in earnest debate. "There," said one of them, "it proves what I have been a-saying. What respect is shown to old age in these days? Do you see that idle lad riding while his old father has to walk? Get down, you young scapegrace, and let the old man rest his weary limbs." Upon this the old man made his son dismount, and got up himself. In this manner they had not proceeded far when they met a company of women and children. "Why, you lazy old fellow," cried several tongues at once, "how can you ride upon the beast, while that poor little lad there can hardly keep pace by the side of you?" The good-natured miller immediately took up his son behind him. They had now almost reached the town. "Pray, honest friend," said a citizen, "is that ass your own?" "Yes," says the old man. "Oh, one would not have thought so," said the other, "by the way you load him. Why, you two fellows are better able to carry the poor beast than he you." "Anything to please you," said the old man, "but we can try." So, alighting with his son, they tied the legs of the ass together, and by the help of a pole endeavored to carry him on their shoulders over a bridge near the entrance of the town. This entertaining sight brought the people in crowds to laugh at it, till the ass, not liking the noise, nor the strange handling that he was subject to, broke the cords that bound him, and, tumbling off the pole, fell into the river. Upon this the old man, vexed and ashamed, made the best of his way home again, convinced that by endeavoring to please everybody he had pleased nobody, and lost his ass into the bargain. The Cat and the Mice. A certain house was overrun with mice. A cat, discovering this, made her way into it and began to catch and eat them one by one. The mice, being constantly devoured, kept themselves close in their holes. The cat, no longer able to get at them, perceived that she must tempt them forth by some device. For this purpose she jumped upon a peg, and suspending herself from it, pretended to be dead. One of the mice, peeping stealthily out, saw her, and said, "Ah, my good madam, even though you should turn into a meal bag, we will not come near you." The Mouse and the Bull. A bull was bitten by a mouse, and, pained by the wound, tried to capture him. The mouse first reached his hole in safety, and the bull dug into the walls with his horns, until, wearied, crouching down, he slept by the hole. The mouse, peeping out, crept furtively up his flank, and, again biting him, retreated to his hole. The bull, rising up, and not knowing what to do, was sadly perplexed. The mouse murmured forth, "The great do not always prevail. There are times when the small and lonely are the strongest to do mischief." The Two Frogs. 2 frogs dwelt in the same pool. The pool being dried up under the summer's heat, they left it, and set out together for another home. As they went along, they chanced to pass a deep well, amply supplied with water, on seeing which, one of the frogs said to the other, "Let us descend, and make our abode in this well. It will furnish us with shelter and food." The other replied with greater caution, "But suppose the water should fail us? How can we get out again from so great a depth?" "Do nothing. without a regard to the consequences. The Dog and the Cook. A rich man gave a great feast to which he invited many friends and acquaintances. His dog availed himself of the occasion to invite a stranger dog, a friend of his, saying, "My master gives a feast. You will have unusually good cheer. Come and sup with me tonight." The dog, thus invited, went at the hour appointed, and seeing the preparations for so grand an entertainment, said in the joy of his heart, "How glad I am that I came! I do not often get such a chance as this. I will take care and eat enough to last me both today and tomorrow." While he thus congratulated himself and wagged his tail as if he would convey a sense of his pleasure to his friend, the cook saw him moving about among his dishes, and seizing him by his fore and hind paws, bundled him without ceremony out of the window. He fell with force upon the ground and limped away, howling dreadfully. His yelling soon attracted other street dogs, who came up to him and inquired how he had enjoyed his supper. He replied, "Why, to tell you the truth, I drank so much wine that I remember nothing. I do not know how I got out of the house." Uninvited guests seldom meet a welcome. The Thieves and the Cock. Some thieves broke into a house and found nothing but a cock, whom they stole and got off as fast as they could. On arriving at home, they proceeded to kill the cock, who thus pleaded for his life. "Pray spare me. I am very serviceable to men. I wake them up in the night to their work." "That is the very reason why we must the more kill you," they replied. "For when you wake your neighbors, you entirely put an end to our business." The safeguards of virtue are hateful to the evil disposed. The Wolf and the Goat. A wolf saw a goat feeding at the summit of a steep precipice, where he had not a chance of reaching her. He called to her and earnestly besought her to come lower down, lest she should by some mishap get a fall. And he added that the meadows lay where he was standing, and that the herbage was most tender. She replied, "No, my friend, it is not me that you invite to the pasture, but you yourself are in want of food." The Lion, the Bear, and the Fox. A lion and a bear seized upon a kid at the same moment and fought fiercely for its possession. When they had fearfully lacerated each other and were faint from the long combat, they lay down exhausted with fatigue. A fox, who had gone round them at a distance several times, saw them both stretched on the ground, and the kid lying untouched in the middle, ran in between them, and seizing the kid, scampered off as fast as he could. The lion and the bear saw him, but not being able to get up, said, "Woe betide us that we should have fought and belabored ourselves only to serve the turn of a fox." It sometimes happens that one man has all the toil and another all the profit. The Dancing Monkeys. A prince had some monkeys trained to dance. Being naturally great mimics of men's actions, they showed themselves most apt pupils, and when arrayed in their rich clothes and masks, they danced as well as any of the courtiers. The spectacle was often repeated with great applause, till on one occasion a courtier, bent on mischief, took from his pocket a handful of nuts and threw them upon the stage. The monkeys, at the sight of the nuts, forgot their dancing, and became, as indeed they were, monkeys instead of actors, and pulling off their masks and tearing their robes, they fought with one another for the nuts. The dancing spectacle thus came to an end amidst the laughter and ridicule of the audience. The Seagull and the Kite. A seagull, having bolted down too large a fish, burst its deep gullet bag and lay down on the shore to die. A kite, seeing him, exclaimed, "You richly deserve your fate, for a bird of the air has no business to seek its food from the sea." Every man should be content to mind his own business. The Philosopher, the Ants, and Mercury. A philosopher witnessed from the shore the shipwreck of a vessel, of which the crew and passengers were all drowned. He inveighed against the injustice of Providence, who would, for the sake of one criminal, perchance sailing in the ship, allow so many innocent persons to perish. As he was indulging in these reflections, he found himself surrounded by a whole army of ants, near to whose nest he was standing. One of them climbed up and stung him, and he immediately trampled them all to death with his foot. Mercury presented himself, and striking the philosopher with his wand, said, "And you are indeed to make yourself a judge of the dealings of Providence, who hast thyself in a similar manner treated these poor ants?" The Traveler and Fortune. A traveler, wearied with a long journey, lay down, overcome with fatigue, on the very brink of a deep well. Being within an inch of falling into the water, Dame Fortune, it is said, appeared to him, and waking him from his slumber, thus addressed him, "Good sir, pray wake up, for had you fallen into the well, the blame will be thrown on me, and I shall get an ill name among mortals. For I find that men are sure to impute their calamities to me, however much by their own folly they have really brought them on themselves." Everyone is more or less master of his own fate. The Fox and the Leopard. The fox and the leopard disputed which was the more beautiful of the two. The leopard exhibited one by one the various spots which decorated his skin. The fox, interrupting him, said, "And how much more beautiful than you am I, who am decorated not in body, but in mind." The Bee and Jupiter. A bee from Mount Hymettus, the queen of the hive, ascended to Olympus to present to Jupiter some honey fresh from her combs. Jupiter, delighted with the offering of honey, promised to give whatever she should ask. She therefore besought him, saying, "Give me, I pray thee, a sting, that if any mortal shall approach to take my honey, I may kill him." Jupiter was much displeased, for he loved much the race of man, but could not refuse the request on account of his promise. He thus answered the bee, "You shall have your request, but it will be at the peril of your own life, for if you use your sting, it shall remain in the wound you make, and then you will die from the loss of it." Evil wishes, like chickens, come home to roost. The Lion and the Hare. A lion came across a hare who was fast asleep on her form. He was just in the act of seizing her when a fine young hart trotted by, and he left the hare to follow him. The hare, scared by the noise, awoke and scudded away. The lion was not able after a long chase to catch the hart, and returned to feed upon the hare. On finding that the hare also had run off, he said, "I am rightly served, for having let go the food that I had in my hand for the chance of obtaining more." The Peasant and the Eagle. A peasant found an eagle captured in a trap, and much admiring the bird, set him free. The eagle did not prove ungrateful to his deliverer, for seeing him sit under a wall which was not safe, he flew towards him and snatched off with his talons a bundle resting on his head, and on his rising to pursue him, he let the bundle fall again. The peasant, taking it up and returning to the same place, found the wall under which he had been sitting fallen to the ground, and he much marveled at the requital made him by the eagle for the service he had rendered him. The Image of Mercury and the Carpenter. A very poor man, a carpenter by trade, had a wooden image of Mercury, before which he made offerings day by day, and entreated the idol to make him rich. But in spite of his entreaties, he became poorer and poorer. At last, being very wroth, he took his image down from its pedestal and dashed it against the wall. When its head being knocked off, out came a stream of gold, which the carpenter quickly picked up and said, "Well, I think thou art altogether contradictory and unreasonable, for when I paid you honor, I reaped no benefits. But now that I maltreat you, I am loaded with an abundance of riches." The Lamp. A lamp soaked with too much oil, and flaring very much, boasted that it gave more light than the sun. A sudden puff of wind arising, it was immediately extinguished. Its owner lit it again, and said, "Boast no more, but henceforth be content to give thy light in silence. Know that not even the stars need to be relit." The Lion, the Fox, and the Ass. The lion, the fox, and the ass entered into an agreement to assist each other in the chase. Having secured a large booty, the lion, on their return from the forest, asked the ass to allot his due portion to each of the three partners in the treaty. The ass carefully divided the spoil into 3 equal shares, and modestly requested the two others to make the first choice. The lion, bursting out into a great rage, devoured the ass. Then he requested the fox to do him the favor to make a division. The fox accumulated all they had killed into one large heap, and left to himself the smallest possible morsel. The lion said, "Who has taught you, my very excellent fellow, the art of division? You are perfect to a fraction." He replied, "I learnt it from the ass, by witnessing his fate." Happy is the man who learns from the misfortunes of others. The Bald Knight. A bald knight who wore a wig went out to hunt. A sudden puff of wind blew off his hat and wig, at which a loud laugh rang from his companions. He pulled up his horse and with great glee joined in the joke by saying, "What marvel that hairs which are not mine should fly from me, when they have forsaken even the man that owns them, with whom too they were born." The Shepherd and His Dog. A shepherd, penning his sheep in the fold for the night, was about to shut up a wolf with them, when his dog, perceiving the wolf, said, "Master, how can you expect the sheep to be safe if you admit a wolf into the fold?" The Oxen and the Butchers. The oxen, once on a time, sought to destroy the butchers, who practiced a trade destructive to their race. They assembled on a certain day to carry out their purpose and sharpen their horns for the contest. One of them, an exceedingly old one, for many a field had he plowed, thus spoke, "These butchers, it is true, slaughter us, but they do so with skillful hands, and with no unnecessary pain. If we get rid of them, we shall fall into the hands of unskilled operators, and thus suffer a double death, for you may be assured that though all the butchers should perish, yet will men never want beef." Do not be in a hurry to change one evil for another. We'll have many, many more wonderful fables from Aesop in Part 5. Good night, Nora.